Now that the party conventions for both the Republicans and Democrats are done and dusted, we can dig into each party's policy proposals for a potential Trump or Harris administration, respectively. Now, I'm not advocating for one or the other. The point is to just catch you up to speed on what each party is proposing by looking at each party's platforms and not worrying about anybody's speeches or attack ads from PACs and super PACs. Over the next few videos, we'll be going over each party's policy proposals as they relate to estate planning, taxes, and your retirement. Today, we're going to begin with the Democrats. Next, we'll talk about the Republicans. Later, we'll compare and contrast each party's platforms and also analyze whether Project 2025 from the Heritage Foundation matches up with the broader Republican Party platform. I'm sure we'll all remain civil in the comments. Without further ado, hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos, and be sure to share the video with that undecided voter in your family. Thank you very much for watching, and let's dive in. Firstly, let's discuss the donkey in the room. President Biden has elected not to seek re-election after the Democratic primaries were done, leaving his Vice President, Kamala Harris, to step in and become the Democratic Party's nominee and confirmed as such at the Democratic National Convention just a few weeks ago. That has led to a sometimes awkward scramble to steer the ship into a new direction. One of those is the fact that you can still find the 2020 party platform on the party's website, at least as far as the time of writing, and the 2024 party platform still indicates that Joe Biden is running. Regardless, the broad stroke shouldn't change, so we can still use this platform to get a good idea of what the Democrats are planning, particularly when it comes to four key aspects: estate taxes, capital gains taxes, stepped up tax bases, and like-kind exchanges, better known as a 1031 exchange. Let's start with estate taxes, or death taxes. The Democrats are emphasizing an opposition to repealing the estate tax, which they argue benefits only the wealthiest Americans, saying they'll, Republicans, repeal the estate tax so the wealthiest 0.1% of Americans can pass wealth onto their heirs tax-free. Democrats criticize Republicans, suggesting that a repeal would allow the wealthiest 0.1% to pass on wealth tax-free, further increasing wealth inequality, which, sure, I suppose, estate taxes only affect a fraction of a percent of Americans, well, at least federally. As a reminder, estate taxes are owed if an estate reaches above a certain threshold, which for 2024 is $13.61 million. That number is indexed to inflation, so it will go up in 2025. However, if Congress does not address the sunsetting provisions of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax cuts, then the threshold will be cut in half to about $7 million. $7 million is still a high number, so it won't impact most Americans, but that would cast a bit of a wider net than where it currently sits. Also, that number is still indexed to inflation, so it will continue to rise. This is a bit of a spoiler for the Republican Party platform, but they aren't actually proposing to do away with the estate tax, only to continue where it currently rests and keep it indexed to inflation. Additionally, keep in mind that the estate tax only got as high as it did and was initially indexed to inflation under the Obama administration, a Democrat, which means that neither party will likely want to lower estate taxes, so my guess is that at the very least, the estate tax will drop to $7 million in 2026, but will continue to rise due to natural inflation, and perhaps Republicans will give it a temporary boost every so often. Now let's tackle capital gains taxes. Democrats are proposing to end preferential treatment for capital gains, particularly for millionaires, so that they pay the same tax rate on investment incomes as they do wages. This is, of course, in line with the party's broader goal of ensuring that the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes, stating, "We'll end the preferential treatment for capital gains for millionaires, so that they pay the same rate on investment income as on wages." Capital gains taxes are taxes paid on the profit you make from selling an asset like real estate or securities like stocks and bonds. Federally, capital gains are taxed at a lower rate than ordinary income like your W-2 wages. As you either gain a lot of wealth or transition into retirement, you rely more on capital gains income than regular wages. Additionally, your capital gains tax rate is tied to your ordinary income tax rate, meaning the less ordinary income you collect, the less capital gains taxes you owe. This is why a wealthy business owners and corporate executive might prefer to have a lower salary but really good alternative compensation such as stock options. Give me stock options so I can have that stock appreciate, only pay capital gains when I actually sell it, and I can borrow against it when I need cash rather than having to liquidate it. This is opposed to cash received as income that I then have to pay taxes on and invest to do the same thing. If I'm a retiree, then I am probably only collecting Social Security and otherwise living off my retirement savings. That means I have less income and likely lower capital gains tax to pay. Going after capital gains for millionaires could be a double-edged sword, and it all depends on implementation. By all means, someone like Sean Hannity can survive paying more in capital gains taxes, but I think the case is less clear when you have some retirees who have saved up a pretty good retirement and also have a house that's appreciated in value greatly because they purchased it many years ago. Not to mention the fact that each state can also collect their own capital gains tax, California's being one of the highest, reaching up to 13.3% for high-income earners. That would be in addition to whatever the feds take under either a Harris or Trump administration. We'll talk about more potential strategies to mitigate this, especially in California, in a future video. But if the federal government eliminates the preferential treatment for capital gains, Californians could face a combined federal and state tax rates on capital gains that are significantly higher than they are now. This could make selling appreciated assets such as stocks or real estate much more costly. Moving on to stepped-up tax basis, that may be on the chopping block as well. The platform explicitly states that the Democratic Party intends to eliminate the stepped-up basis loophole, which allows wealthy individuals to avoid paying taxes on inherited assets by resetting the tax basis at the current market value upon the owner's death. As a reminder, that means when I sell my parents' house after they die, I get to claim the value of the property at their date of death as the basis for determining capital gains, rather than having to use their initial acquisition value. This effectively means I get to wipe away the appreciation that occurred during their lifetimes from being taxed when I sell it after their deaths. Receiving a stepped-up tax basis is the primary tool by which people are able to generate generational wealth in America. That's why home ownership, while maybe not being the best return on your investment per se, is nevertheless a primary investment vehicle for most families, working, middle class, and otherwise. It's due to this being a ubiquitous wealth generation tool that I find this to be just posturing for the base rather than an actual policy goal, which, while we're currently talking about Democrats, don't think the Republicans fare any better at virtue signaling to their respective base. And just in case you're thinking I'm misconstruing the Dems' position here, the platform explicitly states will eliminate stepped-up basis loopholes for the wealthiest Americans so they can't avoid paying taxes on their wealth by passing it down to heirs. I suppose this would be another case of waiting for the writing of actual policy to determine whether this would be a good or bad idea, since there's technically some wiggle room with the phrase wealthiest Americans. But we'll see. My bet is that if this shows up in a bill in Congress, it gets eliminated fairly early on in the process, only to show up again in the next presidential election cycle. Finally, let's get to another policy proposal that I bet is surely DOA, like-kind exchanges, or better known as 1031 exchanges. This is where you can sell a property here while purchasing a similar one there without paying taxes on the sale of the first property, so long as it was done under the proper conditions. I have a whole video where I explain the ins and outs of 1031 exchanges, so I'll link to that in the corner as well as in the description, so you can watch that video after this one for more information. The Democrat Party platform targets the elimination of these like-kind exchange loopholes, which again allows real estate investors to defer paying taxes on gains by reinvesting them into similar properties. The Dems frame this as an unfair advantage that they aim to abolish to ensure tax fairness. I quote, "Will also eliminate the so-called like-kind exchange loophole that allows wealthy real estate investors to avoid paying taxes on real estate profits as long as they keep investing in real estate, a tax break that Trump protected for himself and other corporate landlords in his 2017 tax scam." And it's that second portion of the quote that I think gives the game away, which is again, virtue signaling. Essentially, creating a rallying cry to fire up the base, but that has otherwise no chance of actually becoming law. And they know that. Again, both sides do it, and I think that will become clear when we analyze the Republican Party platform next week, and then really put each parties' platforms side by side in a later video. Bringing it back here though, 1031 exchanges can be a little complicated and the timeline to do it correctly is not forgiving. However, they are still relatively common for much of the middle class, let alone wealthy real estate investors like some of those in Congress who would be tasked with writing this sort of legislation. As with eliminating the stepped-up tax basis, in my opinion, eliminating 1031 exchanges might be a good rallying cry. Stick it to the rich real estate investor like my opponent, but it will likely be just that. A rallying cry that may show up in an early draft of some later legislation, but which will fall away as a bargaining chip through negotiations. All in all, nothing too surprising when it comes to the party proposals. It certainly falls in line with what we would expect from the current Democratic Party. It's light on specific policy proposals, those will come later, but that's the point, just to set the stage for future legislation. Again, as we'll see next week, the Republican Party platform will be similar in tone, but from the opposite end of the spectrum. However, you'll have to be subscribed to hear those details. What do you think of the Democrats' 2024 party platform? Surprising? Crazy? Exactly what you expected? Is there another category you'd like me to explore, like perhaps housing policy? Let me know in the comments below. For now, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, share the video with your fellow political junkies. I'm attorney Andrew Bethel, and I'll see you at our next meeting.